I would also say, I firmly believe that a lot of our social and economic issues facing our country are a direct result of a breakdown of the family.
Amen.
So today, we have the pleasure of having or hearing from four men, all of whom are related, that have worked and served with each other in business and in our community. These four men are Dale Brown, Kerry Brown, Alan Brown, and Todd Brown. So we're going to have a little different format today. These men have agreed to kind of share some of what it means to work with each other and work in the community, and we're going to probably learn some things about fatherhood. May get a chuckle or two if you know these guys. And today, helping us is a man who understands what it's like to be a father, and also knows what it's like to work with family. We have the CEO of Crown Quest, Kim Dunn. So if you would, give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I'm going to be the moderator, and we were going to have the Browns, but we actually have the Oak Ridge boys here. They're going to kick it off, boys. No, that's what I thought of when I thought four guys up there with the microphone. So, it's pretty amazing. Dale has 6 kids. 3 of them are up here, and 29 grandkids, and 3 great-grandkids. So, family, he's got family. And Dale called me, and he said, Tim, we're going to thinking about doing this format, and we're all kind of serious, and we need a comic relief. So would you come and be the moderator? So I said, yes, I'd be happy to do that. So these guys have built 2 billion-dollar-plus businesses, and the kind of equity seed capital that they got was from Dale's time as a missionary in Brazil, which is how he started his. So it's all been bootstrapped, and they've done it together, and it hadn't always been a rosy road. So when you got a group of people that have gone through trials and come out still talking to one another, and not only talking to one another, but doing life together, there's some things they've done right, and there's some things they've done wrong that they've learned from. So today we get a chance to peep into the lives of the Brown family and learn some questions. But what we're mainly going to focus on is fatherhood. Now, every one of you in here carries your dad around in your head with you, carry your dad around in your heart with you, and you've either have or have not made the pivot from your earthly dad to your heavenly dad. You have or have not taken responsibility for your own choices and realized, I'm not just my dad's son. All 4 of these guys up here are dads, and they're all 4 sons. And so we're going to hear about what they've learned about fatherhood, both from being a son and from a father. So they drew straws and decided Todd was going to kind of give the opening statement. And I think this will be like a presidential debate. We'll probably get about 2 sentences in, and then they'll all start correcting him. So,
Only if he gets it wrong.
Todd?
Well, thanks. Thank you guys for letting us have this chance to be with you. We do really believe that family and faith and work, it all mixes together, and we think there's some pretty cool stuff. I want to start by telling you about my dad. Just tell his story a little bit. He grew up mostly on the West Coast. I think he lived in 18 different houses in 16 years, or 16 houses in 18 years. His dad was a preacher, not a very good one. That's why we're around. That's why
A really good man, just not a great preacher.
That's a really good man, but not a very good preacher. And so Dad went to school at Pepperdine back when it was, I was actually born in the hood. I was born in Inglewood, California, which is absolutely the hood. When people from LA, when I tell them I was born in Inglewood, they look at me, no, I've got street cred. So Dad graduated with an accounting degree from Pepperdine and had the second highest score on the CPA exam in the state of California. and a guy named Newton Becker, who was just starting a company which became the Becker CPA Review Course. Anybody familiar with that? It is the gold standard today. It's a multi-million-dollar company. Hired Dad, asked him to help write the curriculum, asked him to be a partner, and a couple of years into that, a guy came in on a Sunday night and said, you know what, we need somebody to go to Brazil as a missionary. And when I graduated from college, I gave a speech, and I described my dad this way. We sang in the car, we were driving, we used to sing a song, anywhere with Jesus, I would safely go. Anywhere in the world below. That was my dad's attitude. He said, if I'm needed there, so he left what became a partnership in a multi-million-dollar company. I went to go be a missionary in Brazil. We were there for about 5 years. Alan was born there. Carrie and I was 2 years old. Carrie was 6 months old. And I believe, so Dad and Newton, you were still friends. So of the 4 of us, 1 of us has been to the Playboy Club. It was just him.
Not me.
Newton was a little different guy. I took Mom and Dad and realized pretty quick they were in the wrong place.
My wife was with me.
So came home after 5 years in Brazil, and he had a cousin who said there are jobs in Midland. So we moved from San Diego to Midland, Texas. And so they started a little accounting firm and basically went bankrupt pretty quickly.
He was already going. He had a down deal. I just jumped off.
But he got a job with one of their clients and helped build that company. And then he's one of the most interesting people on the planet. He is his interests are so wide-ranging and so interesting. So he helped build that oil company where he learned the oil business. Then he built a computer
That was
company.
one with McGraw's Brothers Production Tracks out there.
Yeah.
And so he and Jack knew each other from church and decided to form Brothers Production before the brothers came along. They were brothers in Christ, and that was part of who Dad was. It's just he loved doing business with church people.
So he built an oil and gas company for somebody else. I was thinking about for Carl Lawrence. And then he built another company with Jack. And then he built a computer company that they eventually sold. He's just a really fascinating person. He just has interests in all kinds of things. His most recent interest, some of you may have seen the movie Silence with Martin Scorsese. Dad was the executive producer for that movie. We could explain why that happened, but he was just his interest in trying to do good in the world and make the world a better place just has gone through our whole life, our whole family. So, what else would you add?
Yeah, I would say along the way he served as an advisor, board member to a bunch of different institutions. Abilene Christian University, I think he was there for 24 years. 23, sorry. He served on, he now serves on Pepperdine Board of Regents. He's served on just numerous nonprofit groups to help them. He served on groups that help connect elders throughout churches. He's continued, probably one of the most amazing things for me is just his continued support of the work in Brazil. I would say he's probably had a bigger impact since he left after those 5 years in the work that he and my mother continue to do, going back and supporting the church work there. And I had the privilege with my family in 2008 to take my young family with my mom and dad, and we traveled around Brazil for 18 days. And it was like, I mean this sincerely, it was like traveling with Paul. Every church we went to, there was a reception there that said, just the work that he had done and the contribution that he had made to them, he was providing wisdom and leadership and support and encouragement in a way that was really inspiring to me. I've actually got to serve on a couple of boards following my dad's service there, and to hear the way that others talk about his service and the contributions that he made to them was really it's amazing. He has given a lot of service on that side.
So Alan, that's a great segue. So you got a dad who's this towering figure, and you're a young man and you want to be your own man. Are you still in your dad's shadow? Is that pretty much how you all live? How did you get to the point where you were both a loving son and your own man? And Todd, if you don't mind, just real briefly talking about the ministry that you head up with helping.
I'll let Alan answer that question, and I want
Okay.
to address that.
So I think, and I would say this, I think all three of us did the same thing. One of the things that we did was not go directly back to work with Dad. We actually had opportunities to establish ourselves as our own businessmen in some right before we worked with Dad. Kerry started as a CPA for Grant Thornton. I worked at a law firm. Todd was in ministry in different places. We were able to come back and work with Dad.
You move around every year like Granddad.
He stayed a little bit longer. And
We're improving a little bit.
And I would argue, he's a much better preacher. But I think there was that idea of trying to establish it. But one of the other things that I would say in response to that is, do I still live in my dad's shadow? I think it more of skiing in his wake. That there is a sense of he's plowed some ground for me that made my road easier than doing it. I serve on a board, Waterstone Foundation. Just coming in behind him, I had some credibility with that board simply because I was Dale Brown's son. And it gave me the opportunity to speak in ways that I don't think I would have had I not been skiing in his wake.
So you just kind of first key is make your own way, and then once you made your own way, then you're free to come back in with your
It's a
dad.
choice. You can chafe under it, or you can appreciate it. And one of the things about Dad is he makes it easy not to chafe under. So there's that doesn't live through us. He loves us and he's proud of us, but he's got enough on his own that I've never felt like he was checking any boxes for himself by what I do. And so I could either ski in that wake and really enjoy it, or chafe under. Dad made it pretty easy not to chafe.
If you would have stayed away, would you feel like you had disappointed your dad at all? Stayed at Grant Thornton or
For me,
something?
Tim, I was one of those guys that knew when I was 12, I wanted to come back to Midland. I wanted to work with my dad in the gas business. That was just what I wanted to do. So it was never something Dad wanted me to do. I don't know, but it was something I always wanted to do. When I saw Dad and Jack working together, it just looked like the coolest thing ever. So I wanted to come back. I don't know if the other guys felt different.
So I think I would have a more specific memory of just what you're describing. So I'm with you. I think that the loudest voice in any man's head is his father's. I think that tape plays all your life, good or bad, intentional, unintentional. There are messages you got from your dad that you're still living out of. I'm still living out stuff I got from him. And I remember, because I'm the oldest, I'm used to breaking the snow, right? I mean, I'm used to being the first one to various stages. And I remember in my late 20s, very specifically, feeling like this shadow, because I had been somewhere else and been fairly successful and people didn't view me as Dale Brown's son, they just viewed me as me. And then we moved back to Midland, so I kind of came back under that shadow. And I remember really clearly in my late 20s, having this internal wrestle with Dad's reputation and expectations as a burden or a blessing. And for me, it was a little of both, right? There was a sense in which I couldn't do anything without it being a reflection of him. And so I chose, for me, I made a conscious choice when I was about 28 that I was going to say, I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with who I've become. I don't need anybody. I'm not going to try to live out of that shadow, so I'm going to receive it as a blessing and the opportunity that it provides. And it was a conscious choice I made to say, I'm going to receive that as a blessing, as opposed to struggle against it. And it
What if Dale had been kind of an ogre?
an ogre?
Yeah, you know, could you have done the same thing
You
and
know,
said,
I don't-
I wouldn't do it that way?
I don't know how to answer that question because he wasn't.
Yeah, because he wasn't.
But
Don't you
I-
minister to men though that have had, do you have some experience with that? Or?
Absolutely. So I think,
So how do they do it?
the same thing has to happen where you identify what those tapes are, what those messages are, and you either live into them or you choose a different path, right? So most guys have some message from their dad, and a lot of it is you don't measure up. You're not enough, whatever, you're not enough, right? And so a lot of guys are living, I mean, there's some really successful men who are living to try to prove their dad wrong, right? And there's some men who just have kind of given up and gone passive because that's what dad said I was.
Never measure
I'd
up.
never measure up, and sure enough, that's true. So I think there's a point you have to identify what that is, and then choose to make a break with that, or at least recognize how it works.
So it's my choice. One of the things I control is my perspective. And I get to choose that perspective, and that includes my perspective of my dad and what my dad told me.
So I think that's true to a point. There's a lot of stuff that's below the surface that we don't know. I mean, I think that's a continual process of discovery, right? That those kinds of things.
It's not a one-time event to choose
It's
a proper
not like, now I
perspective.
know everything about myself, and yeah, I don't think so. But as you discover those things, you go, why am I acting that way about this? And a lot of times, I think most of the time, it goes back to you, right? Someone.
Carrie, you started a business with your dad that's become kind of the cornerstone business of what you guys do now. And would you tell them a story about your miserable failure when you were flat on your face and destitute?
Sure.
Maybe some guys in here feeling that way right now.
Yeah, so you guys look right now and think, hey, things were pretty easy, but it was pretty hard. Todd and I had a different life than Alan. I remember when Jack and it was the number 9 well, Travis. Do you remember when that well came in? Our life changed. But Todd and I grew up poor. We were the poorest. Dad's boss actually paid for us to go to be a Christian. So when I say poor, not by world standards, but we're going to private school in my family. We're 6 kids, and Dad has a kid.
Kids of a wage earner.
Yeah, he earned wages.
And Gary and I worked and bought our own clothes. I mean,
We had a paper out since we were 10, and not because Dad was mean, but because if I wanted a car when I was 16, he couldn't pay for it, so we had to work. So that work ethic kind of came through, and then we got a little bit of money, and we came back and started working. We were going to buy a business, and that fell through, and that's a longer story than I'll tell now. But we went to Chili's, and Todd and I and Dad and our wives were sitting there deciding what business we were going to start, and we called it Petroleum Strategies. And we didn't know what we were going to do exactly, but it was going to be a petroleum that was going to have some strategies in it. And that's how it happened. And Dad, he didn't say, hey, I'll partner with you. He said, I'll loan you the top of money to get started. And we got started, and we knocked on every door that I could think of. We went to see, and we were getting appointments. We'd go see these oil and gas guys to do the 1031 business. And through
Tax-free exchange.
yeah, it's tax-free exchanges, and we racked up about $300,000 in debt to
bad.
Dad. And I remember at the time I could go back to Grant Thornton and make $36,000. And I went home and talked to Jill and said, honey, I did everything I could. It wasn't we tried it, and it just didn't work. We had 0 revenue.
Yeah, for a year, we had 0 clients after a year. 0. Not one check.
So I walked into Dad's office, I remember going in and sitting down and saying, hey, Dad, I did everything I could. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to an accounting job. and I'll get you paid off soon. And I still remember, he just looked at me and said, go back to work, I'll tell you when we're done. And that ended up being pivotal in my life. You know, he'll tell me when we're done, and it's been a pretty good bet on his part. And Todd and I somehow we got some revenue, and here we are.
That's a fantastic story. Well, so along the way, one of the things you told me is that your dad gave you acceptance. You never had to worry about whether your dad loved you or not. That was totally unconditional. But you had to really work to earn his approval because he had high standards. Okay? And that's a big, big distinction. You know, if every child had that, we wouldn't have gangs and we wouldn't have cliques. You know, we would have a lot of really stable people. And the reason people do gangs is because they can control, they think, they can control their acceptance. You know, if I behave this way, they'll accept me. And these guys didn't have that issue. Would you talk about that and where it came from? And Dale, where did you get that from to start with? How did you learn to model that? And then what was it like? And when did you realize what you had growing up? What kind of foundation?
Well, as these guys were talking, I worked, you got to be thinking, when did you have time to be a dad? And the truth is, I wasn't a very good dad from that standpoint. And I'll talk a little more about that after I tell you how my relationship.
From the standpoint of what? The time or the?
My being a dad for these guys.
For these guys, yeah.
My dad was wrapped up in his role as a minister, as a preacher. And everybody had demands on his time, so kind of, I knew he cared about me. I never liked acceptance. But he was more or less absent in what I felt like my world. So we were all part of his world. And so acceptance was never a question. I grew up with 3 younger sisters, just barely younger than I, so I was kind of looked up to in lots of ways anyway. So I had even maybe more than acceptance, but felt like they depended on me. And so belonging wasn't a problem. I felt like that was comfortable. It was and I thought about this a good bit, but I grew up with a definition of success being measured more by achievement. And I really believe success is more measured by contentment. And that wasn't modeled for me very well. It's always something more to do, something more to help increase my value. And so I think, if I think of my failure with these guys, my shortcomings, maybe not a failure, but what they have to overcome, what they didn't learn from me and have had to learn otherwise, is the value of contentment and the emotional side of life, the emotional side of a human being. Reasonably, took care of reasonably well from a physical and a moral and spiritual standpoint. That part of their development is going fine. I was clueless about the emotional, about where they were as individuals.
That failure really comes through too, just to put it by the way.
So
it's kind of a basket case.
Maybe I get some credit for them being achievers. I don't know. But they didn't see the model of the, let's say, the empathy or caring side for, I don't know where that makes sense to anybody else, but
when did you make that discovery?
You know, it's been really more talking with Todd through the ministry he's talked about, and
Todd's the one that showed you that?
Well, probably, yeah.
So let's do this. Tell the story of the screeching tires, and then tell the story of how this amazing incident came to be, where it seems a bit the tables were turned.
So, Dad's right. I mean, I think my younger brothers and sisters had a different dad than I did.
Yeah, for instance, he coached my baseball team, all through Little League, these guys. He was big.
When I got married, we had kids, and there would be a kid thing, and I would say, well, I'm not going to go to that because I've got work, and my wife would look at me like I was insane. Why? How could you miss when something your kids were doing? And my response was, that's how I grew up. I mean, Dad wasn't there. He worked all the time. I never felt unloved, unaccepted.
Yeah, he always came home at 6 o'clock and would have dinner with us, and then he'd go back to the office at 8, so he was there from 6 to 8, and there again, I've analyzed this. How did I not get frustrated with Dad working as much as he did? And what I've come to my conclusion, I don't know if it's right or not, is I never doubted that Dad would rather be with me. He always went to work because he needed to go to work to do a really good job. And it wasn't, he went to work to escape. He would always rather be with us. But he took his responsibilities pretty seriously, and whatever he did, he was going to do it well.
So there was a teaching there too.
And so we grew up in a very, very strict, I would say we grew up pretty strict. And a lot of
I don't know anyone strict. I don't know a house where we had, none of my friends had the kind of rules we had growing up. I couldn't go to dances. I couldn't chew gum. That was one of the.
I couldn't wear my long sleeve shirts rolled up. We had, I remember having an argument. So anyway,
You still can't walk and chew gum.
So,
The two you got without walls, that was a problem.
so Tim, let me say this. So they're actually here. We've got some consultants that work with us as a family to kind of help. They help us fight fair and help us keep things clean and help. They've been great for us. But the first time they were with us, they said, after they spent a couple of days, they said, "You're really, really nice guys, and you're very hard men." In other words, we're easy to get along with, and to be friends is great, but to get our respect, you have to perform at a pretty high level. And we got that. And my dad's always been that way. He's always had when you use the word critical, I don't mean it in a real negative sense, but a critical eye. He knows how to solve problems. He knows how to make things better. And so he's always looking at, okay, that was fine, but how can we do better? How can we improve on it?
Yeah, I would, so if I were someone that, Dad's a simple guy. He's a hard guy, but he's a simple guy. He lived, I'm going to try to find out what God wants me to do. And that's what he did. And if he thought that I shouldn't do something, he was immovable. I mean, you weren't ever going to win an argument with that. And as I was thinking about the young dads out there and how to, what's an important story, I have two memories of Dad and my athletic endeavors. And he was there a whole lot, because he wasn't there every time, but he was there a whole lot. One of my first memory was riding up to my baseball team, and there's my dad in the middle of the street, and he's a white dude, and he's in his tidy white, he's changing clothes in front of God and everybody, and I was just incredibly embarrassed. But he'd come straight from work, he was changing clothes to get out on the baseball field. And that was just kind of, he didn't worry about what everybody else thought, he was just going to do his thing. The other
I'm never going
was,
to get that picture out of my mind.
I remembered it. I'm scarred for life.
Just for what it's worth, I learned to change in the car.
Yeah, he was in a hurry. I don't know why. It's in the middle of the street, right by Rusk Elementary. I still remember it.
The man will never forget that.
Yeah, they got to it, I'm sure. But as I was thinking this morning, I thought, well, what I remember about Dad's sports, I never remember, not saying he didn't, but I do not remember him asking me, did I get a hit? I don't remember him asking me what my batting average was. I remember one story, and it was when I was 9 years old, playing the B-League City Championship game. And I was the catcher, and we were behind 29-2. And and it was 29-2 because the pitcher couldn't throw a strike. And he hits the screen again, and I get up, I walk back there. I kind of walk it back to him. We were down 29-2. And he hits the screen again, I walk back there, and I see my dad. And he says, if you walk back there and pick that ball up again, I'm coming down there, I'm take that catcher's gear off of it, and you may not ever play baseball. And he didn't care ever whether I got a hit. But if you were going to do it, you were going to do it as if it was the Lord. And I don't know, so when I think back about that, I don't know that matters, but it mattered to me at the time when I think back that he really didn't care about my achievements as much as he cared about my character.
One of the stories that I think of that kind of reminds me of the character that he had, and he wasn't immovable though, because
He had a
Baby brother.
I'm not done yet.
We had one of those. He didn't learn to tie his shoes till he was 7. I finally had to tell his brother and sister, stop tying Wally's shoes.
No, so I'm thinking of the orange bicycle story, guys. And so we had a paper route that they had it before I did, and right when we got it, there was 350 papers, a pretty big area, and my mother would get in the car. We had a little Honda Accord hatchback, and she would drive them around and to throw the papers. We'd help, the little ones would help fold, and these guys would throw. And Dad was absolutely certain that was lazy. That was just unreasonable for us to get in the back of a car.
Only one of my friends that had a job, by the way.
The back of a car and throw newspapers. So he was going to demonstrate for us how you throw papers on the back of a bicycle. So he gets the big pack, the front and the back. And it's all loaded down with newspapers.
It was Labor Day, and there were a lot of ads in the papers.
It was an extra thick one.
And so it was a double bag, so in front and back, and it was absolutely stuffed, okay? And now, mind you guys, I'm not sure you got the picture. Carrie and I are sitting on the back of a Honda hatchback Accord with the top up. We're grabbing hold of the strut, going with our hands. We're flying around those neighborhoods, going 350 papers every day. It was the biggest paper out in Midland. We actually won Paper Carrier of the Year in Texas for our accuracy.
It didn't count because we didn't do it on a bicycle. He did it on a bicycle. The 20 papers that he did when he was a kid, he did on a bicycle.
We knew he was disappointed that we weren't doing it on a bicycle. We knew. And so he was going to show us a Labor Day. So he gets it all stacked up. And we're in the car behind him.
We were riding bikes behind him.
Were we? Okay. We were behind him. And he threw one with his right hand, and the bike was too small for him.
It was a 10-speed bike.
And his legs were like this around the newspapers, and so he threw one and got off balance and wobbled for about 20 yards before he ends up upside down, the bike on top, papers everywhere.
I think he just said, get in with your mother.
We didn't say a word. Just it was one of the best moments of my life.
But the reason I say he's not immovable, because from that point forward, we did newspapers in the back of the car.
We never heard any more about
bicycle.
So you want me to tell the story? I'll tell the story about. Carrie and I were in the backyard. I was about 12. He would have been about 10. And he wanted. He was trying to mess with me. I was ignoring him. I was doing something in the dirt or down low. He was pretending to fight me, and I wasn't paying attention. He took a swing, and right then I turned to look at him, and he hit me right on the jaw, just crack. And both of us froze. He knew he was dead. I knew he was dead. We just sat there for a few seconds, and then he took off for the back door.
I ran for mama.
Yes, he did. He took off with that door, and right as he got to the sliding glass door, he opened it up, and I hit him as hard as I could right in the middle of the back. And he flew into the living room, and he landed right in front of my mother. And she turned, and he couldn't breathe, right? She couldn't breathe. And she saw him on the floor, and she saw me with my fist. And she said to me, you go back to your room and wait for me, I'll be right there. She let me stew a little too long. She came back, and I was, the whole time I was there, I was thinking, this is so wrong, this is so unfair, it's so unjust. She came back and she said, Todd, bend over. And I said, no, ma'am. And she said, Todd, bend over. And I said, no, ma'am, I will not. And she said, Todd, bend over. And I stood up. And I said, no, ma'am, I will not. I'm bigger than you, and you can't make me. And she looked at me.
He wasn't the brightest kid. Let's just start.
That's true. And she left the room, and I was sitting there. I was like, wow, this is a new era in my life. This is like a whole. And about 3 minutes later, I heard the tires out front. I heard the door open, 3 steps down the hall that normally took 7. And that was the last spanking that I ever got. Both of us went at it a different way.
But you know, Dale, and you guys, I'm sure you've carried it on. Maybe you didn't do the chewing gum thing, but don't you feel like creating boundaries for your kids is like the most important love you can give them? One of the most important loving things you can do.
I mean,
I was talking to them. I know you gave them boundaries. We know all about that now.
So I'm going to say it 2 different ways, because I think the answer is yes, having boundaries, but more specifically, enforcing the boundaries that you set. And I think that's
Pick
one of
your
the things
battles
that
and
we
stick
got.
with them.
We got consistency. If mom and dad said it, if that's then that it was
Reasonable or unreasonable?
reasonable or unreasonable, and we were never guessing where we stood, right? I think we all knew what the rules were, we knew the game, and the rules we were playing by, and there was no mistaking it, and we knew that if we didn't, there would be consequences, and there were lots of them. So from that perspective, I mean, we had a very strict hold of it, but we knew the game. We didn't. One day it wasn't, hey, this is the rule, and then we moved that rule. But we had some things that we learned growing up, and we're in a different season of life right now with Dad. And for me, one of the most special moments that I can remember in recent years, that we went on a fishing trip to Alaska with my dad. It was me, Todd, Carrie, and then our younger brother, Ray. And it was just the 5 of us for 6 days of fishing in Alaska all together. It was a really, really great time. But the night we got there, my dad sat down with us, and we had some rules all growing up, and really some expectations about primarily 2 things: smoking and drinking. Dad knew that there's a likelihood that he might have a different take on those 2 issues, specifically cigars and a glass of wine, that would be different than what he would have done. And he sat us down, and I'll never forget it. I called my wife that night and said, this is a really big deal, and one of my proudest moments of my dad is he said, you guys have learned some things that you didn't get from me. And if my being here would diminish your joy because you're not going to do some of the things that you've learned not from me, I want you to do what you guys will do otherwise. And I'm here, and I'm going to enjoy being here with you guys. And the grace that he had in that moment for us to say, we reasonable thinking, good people can come at different sides of those issues and come to different conclusions. He was not so rigid that he valued me and his relationship with me more than the rules.
He moved from boundaries to relationship over time. And he started pretty hard on boundaries. And I think that was a time where That was when I was 50, so it took a while before he got there. That was the time he
Well, what do you do with your kids? How do you do boundaries in relationships? And how did you get let go? You know, what we did with our boys is, you know, they turn 18, graduate from high school. I gave them a check. This is all you're getting. I know this is going to be a good investment. You go blow this on a sports car, that would be an awesome learning experience for you because you'll learn how easy money is to go and how hard it is to come. And you make your own decisions, do whatever you want to, just don't come ask for more. And if you make a wise investment, come back and see me. I'd love to do business with you. And they all believed it because we had also been consistent. Our rules was more like we have 3 or 4 rules. You can be feral for the rest of it. We had balls flying through the house and mayhem going on, so we didn't have many rules. We just, you know, picked a few battles, eat your broccoli, type of things. How did you guys get, like, I'm my own man? How did you get to that point? And how did you take this thing that your dad was passed on with boundaries and relationships are both vital and apply it to your own kids?
So I left home with a resentment about the kind of restricted boundaries that I had. And so as a parent, we had much fewer boundaries. Now, we tried to be consistent, and we didn't just love it, but there was a pretty significant shift for us.
Where you were consistent, but much fewer.
It was so part for me was when I got married, just the finest family in the world for in-laws, and the fact that she didn't have the kind of rules that I grew up with was very jarring for me. It was like, oh, but family can be done a different way. And so there have been some adjustments. I mean, Dad will tell you, my kids grew up under a very different set of rules than his kids grew up with. But I do think it's important, so I don't want to diminish that. For me, the becoming my own man, told him when I was late 20s, it was a pretty significant moment,
Yeah.
but it was mostly just a process. And I think Dad had that built in. I don't know that it was a conscious decision for him. I think he had to become his own man when he was in 9th grade. I mean, honestly, he was pretty independent of his parents, and I think he expected that for us. So
It was more of an unspoken
it
expectation.
was more of an unspoken expectation, more of a process. I knew that I had support from Dad, but he wasn't just going to bail me out, right? So
You sort of got the same thing I did deliberately with my boys, but it was just more understood.
It was understood.
So I had a specific experience. I went to, right out of law school, I went to a law firm in Abilene, and didn't last long, wasn't a good experience. And as part of that process, ended up with a tax debt that I couldn't pay. It was a strange circumstance, but my thought was, I'll go call Dad. He's got it. He'll fix this. And I remember going and walking into him and saying, Dad, here's the problem. It wasn't my fault. The way they taxed me, I got this thing. And the truth was, my wife and I had lived beyond our means, weren't paying attention, got in a situation where we were in a bind. And he looked at me and he said, that's your problem. And I'm like, whoa, you're not going to bail me out on this one? He said, no, I'm not. So I went and I sold the car. I got a signature loan from Rick Bartholomew at the time of, whatever bank it was called then. And it took me a while to pay it all back. But I did. And it bothered me for a while that he didn't bail me out until several years later. We were doing something, and we were going to do a remodel on our house, and we had kind of fixed our financial situation. We're in a good spot. And Dad made a comment in his office that made me think, he thinks I'm still back where I was 5 years ago. And it was a very emotional time with the two of us. Me explaining to him, no, Dad, That's not, I was there, and I know I disappointed you then, and I know I didn't do what, handle my finances like you wanted me to back then, but I'm okay now. And he took that and said, I believe you. You've done well, and it was a really important moment for me to understand the lesson that he was giving me of, you're on your own, kid. I mean, he could have bailed me out.
Sure.
He absolutely could have bailed me out.
You're your own man.
It would have been insignificant, but he allowed me to be my own man. And so I think that's part of it, is he allowed that, and it's what allows today for us to have relationship in a business relationship in a way that I know I'm going to respect. But I needed to earn it on my own and not go let him bail me out.
You know, our son David is a musician and wild man. He told us, he said, you know, when I went off to Montana to school, the world was so good to me. And I wanted to rebel so bad. But because you had set me on my own, I knew I would have nobody to blame for the wreckage but myself. So I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So that thing of being on your own, that's a big, big deal. Boundaries, relationships, acceptance, approval. You guys have done pretty good. And you're passing the lessons you had on along. Thank you for opening up your lives so we can benefit from it. Guys, don't you appreciate it? Now what? A few questions. Yes, Daniel? He said, would you be my dad?
Love to.
Both have the same hairstyle. That goes really well. Yes? Hang on one second.
Comment about teaching your boys contentment as opposed to achievement, right? I can get my head around teaching my kids achievement. How do you teach them?
Obviously, I didn't know how, so I didn't. And I'm not sure I yet know how. I do appreciate the value of it. I will say that I think the key measurement of spiritual maturity is gratitude. So I think a focus on gratitude will say, hey, what you have, you didn't earn necessarily. You aren't entitled. So I guess dealing with gratitude as a value would be, I think, a way to encourage contentment. So others may have a better idea than that, but that's what comes to mind.
Francis Schaeffer said, being willing to accept the place that God has put you in the battle is one of the key determinations of spiritual maturity. I think that's similar to kind of what you're saying. I'm in the station God's put me, and I'm willing to fully embrace it. Is that another way to say it? Yeah. Good question. Who else? Time for maybe one or two more.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you all for opening up your lives and letting us all learn from you guys. My question along the same line with Mr. Young is, how do you balance instilling a value of the kids having a drive for excellence and contentment? How did you make that balance?
So by contentment, I don't think that means settling for less than your best. So I think there's a difference between settling, in other words, coasting or lowering the standard, if you will. But seeing that if I've done the best I knew how to do, except not measured entirely by results, but looking at effort as maybe a more important factor than result. if that makes sense. Because I've said many times that a family that is the blessing that mine is a clearly more of a blessing than an achievement. But I know a lot of people who have put at least as much effort into having a good family as I have done, and what I really have done, and not have the same blessing. So I accept it as a gift. I think we had something to do with it by virtue of how we had learned to behave from our families of origin and so forth in positive ways, and the spiritual and moral training that we've gotten that help us to understand how life works in the world. So that looking at effort more than achievement, I'd say maybe is a way to put it.
Yeah, so it's a great question, how to balance this drive for excellence with contentment. I think a big part of it is modeling. I think Dad didn't say a lot about working hard. He just worked really, really hard, and I just knew that's what a man does. So there was a lot of it that was unspoken. And at the same time, I knew that fundamental, what he did talk a lot about was following Jesus. We talk about that all the time. And just watching his life as he seriously tried to integrate his faith in the rest of his life, and there was no part of our life that didn't include this idea of honoring God, being faithful to Jesus, of following after God. There was no part of our life that was exempt from that. And so, modeling it and then talking about the integrated life where you don't separate business. We don't separate business and faith. We don't separate friendship and faith. It's all mixed up together. For me, I've never known a life that didn't have ministry and business and the rest of life all mixed up together. It just is what we do. And so it's just modeling for us.
And even in that modeling aspect, even in conflict, that separation between the two, this is my work life and this is my other life, just didn't happen. I remember there was a business conflict with he and Mr. McGraw. They were business partners. They had a dispute about how they ought to handle something. And it didn't even cross his mind to go say, we're going to go sit down with some lawyers and figure this out. They went and sat down with church leaders and said, how do we work this out? What does the Bible say about that? This is how we do it. It was part and parcel of who they were, and we didn't have that distinction. I can't remember that.
So we have a lot of conflict, but it's generally around trying to figure out what God wants us to do, and we don't always see that the same way. But somehow, in Dad's consistency of modeling, I would say what you guys see today is what I see behind closed doors, and there's a pureness to Dad's heart that just came to me. I don't know. I wish I could be as pure-hearted as Dad, and I strive to be as pure-hearted as Dad. But that pure heart allows us to have good conversations about choices that we make differently in our stage in life. And I've never felt from Dad how I was raising my kids, which is different than how he did. He's not criticizing. He may go, man, I don't agree with this because that may lead to this, but he doesn't feel to me like he felt like he had the recipe that God gave him. What God gave him, he did. And he expects me to do the same thing. What God tells me to do, he expects me to do. And that allows us to have conflict around moral issues that maybe we can like each other and still disagree.
All right, let's thank the Browns again for. Thank you all as well for being here today. Let me close this in prayer and you're dismissed. Father, we are so grateful for just the transparency and the example that the Brown family has demonstrated before us. We all know that no one's perfect, and they've not come here and said that they were, but they've just openly talked about the things in which they've learned from you. Father, I just pray that in some of the stories and some of the truths that have been shared, that we might see and understand how you have us change our lives. Go with us as we go back to work now.